Alright, this is a video I've been wanting to do for quite some time. And it's a quote-unquote tier list when it comes down to refinement. It's been something I've been wanting to do for quite some time, but haven't quite been able to because, well, I'm a lazy fuck, let's put it that way. I just didn't have any screenshot of every character with their refined weapon until someone actually gave me a screenshot with all of them combined, which I proceeded to crop around a bunch of them until I made this video. So special thanks to SomeCrazyFellow for that one. I actually would not, I would probably not have actually sat down to do this otherwise. So, I'm going to go through them in alphabetic order, because that's just the way I've entered them in my bar. So I guess we should really get started, because this video is most likely going to be maybe around 45 minutes, maybe an hour, and yeah. Better get to work, essentially, is what it comes down to. So, I doubt this surprises anyone. He has a 16 might brave weapon. He's insane. He can actually deal with a lot of the meta nowadays. He deals with most dragons. In fact, to a point where, unless you have deflect melee, the dragon's dead. Doesn't matter if it's blue. It's dead. Period. Deflect melee can let characters like Myrrh actually live, but that's on very high merges. So more often than not, this is extremely powerful. Do understand though that if you are not at full HP, you basically go down from an S tier character to a A tier character. So it surprises no one that either run the fuck away or two, run a healer, or both. I don't judge. It's definitely the best weapon to refine in the entire game right now, without a shadow of a doubt. Let's move to Sita. Sita got a huge buff as well with her weapon. If you do run her with Wingsword, do understand that you will want Attack Plus, because that's a super boom. And yeah, she can, especially with the meta nowadays, and that's something I forgot to mention with Alm, since they're both red, they can actually deal with Hector, Grima, especially Grima. Grima's fucking dead in Alm's hand, and a lot of other armored units, but that's more akin to Alm, less so for Sita, because Sita can be stopped via Wary Fighter, which kind of struggles. The reason why I ranked her as S- and not S, because, you know, she kills the meta, she deals with armored unit. It's because, well, it's not as consistent as all. By the way, concerning the tier list, just a little note. It's just a type of order, like, what's better, what's worse. A+ is where I consider it worth it and up. But that doesn't mean all of them below A+ are worthless. Some of them depends on the character himself more than anything. Anyway, moving on. So, Sita, Flashing Blade. Absolutely insane on her. If you run her with Desperation, you might want to run Glacies instead of Iceberg. If you don't, Iceberg is a bit better, because you'll get hit between your two hits. So you'll proc Iceberg on your third one if you do double. So moving on to Crom, Lucina, Mass Morph, and Mass Morph, yeah. This function is a bit longer to explain. It makes Lucina and Mass Lucina have a really broken offense. As for Crom, I think he's the worst user of it, but not by much. A lot of people consider Crom to be really awful with it. Like, he can't really use the speed that much. The res is fucking useless on him, except for like 2 dragons or so. But it actually makes him extremely bulky, and you can pair that up with stuff like Attack Death Bond, or, you know, stuff like that, which makes him fairly good as a QR potential threat. He basically can become a bit like Lucas, but able to heal every 2... well, is it every turn? No, it's every 2 turn. So, yeah, it becomes a tanky tank, basically. Tanky tank. That can heal up. So, it's not that bad. It's just... there's better out there, in my opinion, in terms of priority, if I'm being honest. This might actually be shorter than an hour now that I look at it, because I'm talking mainly about the weapons themselves. I fucking hope so, because... Jesus Christ. I can already tell when I'm going to do a tier list with Sages, it's going to be maybe fucking 2 hour long per color. So many new units. Jesus. Anyway, Siglind. Siglind? Blah. 2 things to note about that weapon is that, well, 1, it makes her actually decent in battle. But 2, since it has own attack 3, you can actually ditch the rally defense, especially now. If you're on the mixed team, and run rally speed instead, with Fortress, what the fuck am I saying? Death Tactic, Seal, and Rest Tactic, the skill. You will buff even more that way. You will buff yourself by like 6 Def and 6 Res. And 4 attack, 4 speed, if you're around your teammates, obviously. So, it's extremely useful, especially since teammates buff you as well. The reason why it's not higher on the list is because a lot of time, if you really want to abuse that effect, you kind of want to run Distant Counter on her, because the buffs essentially fixes her bulk, so you don't really need to run Fury. Now, Fury can also work, but to a lesser extent. So, she can be a bit expensive to build, but she's really good. It's an actual really good refine. Eldigan now. Boy, Eldigan. Eldigan is surprisingly good with that refine. It's just you don't want to run double Fury because that kills you instantly, essentially. But the fact that you can have Fury in cooldown -1 actually makes him able to be a better Xander. What I mean by this is, you know how Xander run Fury in DC on his weapon? Well, Eldigan can run cooldown -1, Fury, and then DC in the A slot. So it's basically cooldown -1 on Xander, able to merge way more, able to get IVs as well, and able to run a few other sets that are actually kind of cool. A good example is a build I really want to use myself, which is Heavy Blade in his A slot, Desperation in his B, Brash Assault in his S, with Bonfire. Because since Bonfire becomes 2 cooldown, the first hit gets Bonfire ready, the second one procs Bonfire when you're in Brash Desp. It works in Break Wary Fighter, Swordbreaker if you have enough speed as well, which is really good because my Eldigan is fucking +9. Now, it's a bit less good for people that don't have that high a merge, but he can definitely use Heavy Blade. Because he hits, like, mine hits 64 attack. So yours can hit 60 attack if you have attack plus. So you get the idea. It's still pretty solid on him. Purely because horse buffs are a thing. So yeah, he's pretty solid. And Xander is not awful nowadays. But the fact that he doesn't get IVs, the fact that you can't get enough merge, so you can't really score high in arena, really hurts him. Again, that's more my opinion, but oh well. Let's move on to Eliwood. For those that follow on my streams, I actually have been using Eliwood in the last Tempest trial. He's actually really good because, and also you kind of want to rely on a speed plus IV because while it's great that Heavy Blade procs, you still already hit 60 attack. if you go the 4-star plus 10 route like I did. And that's without a seal. So yeah, I was running Quicken Pulse Iceberg for Tempest Trial. I understand Glacies is a bit better when you're outside of Tempest Trial. But in Tempest Trial with Quicken Pulse, your cooldown goes down to 2. The first hit gets your skill ready, the second one procs it. You get the idea. It's really good. Is he better than Brave Roy? Yes, it kinda depends. What I mean by this is Brave Roy can get fucked by IVs. Eliwood doesn't, because he's available at 3 and 4-star. So getting the right IVs is easy. Also, for people that don't understand why I say like I use a 4-star plus 10 with Blazing Durandal, if you merge a 5-star into a 4-star, the 4-star learns everything the 5-star learned. And that holds true with skills like Durandal, or Blazing Durandal, or both. If you give Durandal to your 4-star, you can awaken Blazing Durandal from it. I know, because I gave Durandal before Blazing Durandal was a thing. So, yeah, it's actually really solid on him. But if you get a good Ivy Brave Roy is better than Eliwood. That much is certain. That said, if you go 4-star plus 10 and you got speed plus on him, whereas you don't on Brave Roy, Eliwood is better. It comes down to luck, essentially. Essentially. Fucking kill me now. Ephraim. So I've put both skills side by side because really there's no reason not to. It's... I know I might get some flack for this, but I don't consider it to be a really good weapon upgrade. That said, there's a reason why you would choose one over the other if you really want it. There's a reason why I've put Ephraim actually only at A+, like passable grade. And it's just, it doesn't really help him that much. Like, base Sigmund is great and all, but it's basically just so if you hit, you get to double as well. That's cool and all, but Ephraim is usually used as a tank bait unit. The reason why I point this out is quick riposte is a thing, and it works the same way as Sigmund, but on enemy phase, which is better for him, in my opinion. It doesn't exactly help him enough, in my opinion, and I do consider Death plus 4 / HP plus 5 to be a better refine on it, if you really want to refine him. That's just my opinion. You can use Sigmund that way with Death Blow 3, and that's cool and all, but frankly, if you really want Death Blow 3, just go Fierce Stance on, like, Quick Repose base kit with more Death and HP. I feel like that's a way more useful and productive use of your resources, because 200 do for this is fucking retarded. And then the arguably better and cheaper alternative, Flame Sigmund, which... Oh, I never noticed there was a typo in there. Sigmund Sagmund, for some reason. Okay, it's typed differently. Whatever, I don't judge IS. Anyway, so Flame Segment does the same as the first one, but and it works in multi-phase, basically like follow-up ring if you don't have any unit near him. And that might sound awful, and frankly, Legendary Ephraim can use it better. He hits a whooping 70 attack if you have attack plus, and he's not merged. Just attack plus death blow or his buffs. He uses it way better than this variant of Ephraim. Especially since, you know, horses cover more distance, so it's easier to be far away from your allies, so it's easier to, you know, essentially proc the effect. But there's a video I've seen, I think it's from Embor Both, or Boff, I don't know how to pronounce that shit. I think that's him anyway. He was using this set with Steady Breath, with Flame Sigmund, which is not a bad idea with Aether, because that way you always double, so you get more charge out of Aether. You always will proc Aether because your speed is shite, and if you have Quicken, well, Quicken Pulse really doesn't help at this point, so forget I said that. But, so it's a bit easier for him. You can also run Guard and combo with Flame Sigmund. It actually works kind of well. But that requires you to have Steady Breath and Aether Fodder, which is not that easy to obtain. I think we can agree on this. So, it's a head or tail situation. If you really like Ephraim and you really want to give him a good set, yeah, Flame Sigmund can work. The base Sigmund is not worth it in my opinion. It just doesn't matter this well. I will also point out, like, base Sigmund, go for Death / HP Refine, because the main reason you actually refine it is for own attack 3, to buff Blade Tomes, because Flame Sigmund does not have that ability. But if you're using him for combat, and you really like the character and you really want to build him as a fighting unit, Flame Sigmund Steady Breath can be way better. Now that this is gotten out of the way, let's move on. Alicia actually got a really good buff, because while her attack is fairly piss poor, if I'm being honest, it doesn't really matter, because you target the res or death. Now, mixed tanks, which are more and more prevalent in Arena nowadays, will just say fuck off and kill her. Especially, like, I'm looking at, like, dragons especially, DC units as well, which tends to be very, very prevalent in Arena right now. So, yeah. The reason I still put her at S- though is for PVM purpose. She is absolutely amazing. She is a rest tank, she deals with most mage, so she can be extremely useful in a pinch. A Refine is not bad, but if you use her in Arena, don't bother. Just don't bother getting that Refine. It's infinitely better to go for extra speed or res, but more often than not speed. Actually, no, it's more like speed or attack, but even then, like, it's not great. Still, if you're using her for PVM, that special cooldown works both when you attack, get attacked, and doesn't matter who initiates or whatever, you always get 2 charges. It's basically like Steady Breath, but it works in both ways when it comes down to the cooldown. Which is really amazing for PVM, like I said earlier. It's just not that great for PvP. So, let's move on to Hector. Now, Hector has been considered one of the best units, though I've usually been like, nah, that's bullshit, boy. That's fucking bullshit. And I still hold true to this day with this, but Berserker Armads, unlike base Armads, is actually really solid. Cooldown -1 and able to run double Wrath is absolutely insane. Now, the reason why I don't consider him to be like an S or S plus tier upgrade is he doesn't really need it. Especially, like, if you have LA Hector, there's no reason whatsoever to use that Hector. It's just, there's no reason. No reason at all. And while it has a nice effect, I don't know, like, Hector just got power creep to hell and back stat-wise. So there's not much of a reason to run it, but if you really like the character, it's a really good weapon on him. You'll hear me say that a lot, if you like the character, because a lot of those Refine are not worth it otherwise, in my eyes. But QR2 on base Hector is kind of pointless. I'm sure you can use the Wary Fighter double QR, but that's extremely gimmicky, and frankly, don't bother. In general, you tend to run Bolt Fighter if you really want to use his base axe, because that way you have QR and Bolt Fighter with your seal slot still open. Just pointing that out. If you use Berserker Mats, you kind of need to have Wrath, which is also hard to obtain. So, just let that sink in. Now, for a character I actually do like a lot what happened to her. Anoka, my god, did I not expect her lens to be this good? Freaking hell. So, for the longest time, Anoka has always been in the shadow of Cordelia and Tana, for very obvious reason. She lacks in speed, they have the same attack, so she's basically just an inferior version. Until Anoka's Spear happened. There's two things I will say about this lens though. First off, the base effect is insane. It works with infantry or flyers, so you can actually run mixed teams really well with this and still get the buff. But another thing to note is that she basically has guidance, but it works on infantry and flying units. Built in a weapon. Now, that's fantastic, but I will say it really depends on the situation. If your team comp can really use that, that refine is fantastic. But another refine that's really worthwhile is speed. Because Cordelia and Tana's main problem is that regardless of the build they go with, unless they go slaying, like slaying lens, they can't actually buff their speed through their weapon from refine. But Anoka's Spear is refinable for speed. And if you buff it with speed, you essentially end up with a Cordelia with +4 attack and speed, one near an ally that can buff, well, that can buff her, yeah. So, it's really good. Like, it basically makes her stat spread ends up at 39 attack, 39 speed, which, no stretch of the imagination, is amazing. Period. Especially when compared to another character that, like Cordelia, that's like very considered like one of the best because 35. The only thing is, obviously, Cordelia runs Fire Sweep. So, yeah, you are going to get hit. She won't. At least when you're in control. That said, Desperation can remediate to this. Just pointing that out. It's a very excellent weapon, and frankly, there's only two ways you really can want to go with it, and it's either speed refine or the weird guidance thing refine. Like reverse flyer formation mixed with guidance that doesn't work on armored unit. I don't know how to fucking explain this. It's a really good weapon, is what it comes down to. Frankly, it's one of the best refine this game has, by far. Anyway, let's move on to another unit. Jafar. Now, you might be surprised by how high I've put him, but frankly, his weapon essentially becomes Death Smoke, Rest Smoke, Pain Plus built in together, which is really solid. He can become a very fantastic debuffer because of that, which is absolutely insane. The only problem he has is, well, there's two things you can do with him. You can run Wind Sweep, completely removing the chance of him doubling, but that way anything that is not a dragon cannot hit you back. And you tear a new asshole every time you attack, especially with double Savage Blow. With maybe, I was going to say Poison Strike, but that's for Wind Sweep, and that's for another set. So you, like, do 24 splash damage to everything around the target, and the target itself takes 10. It's insanely good, no matter how you look at it. But dragons will fuck you up, still. Now, Another thing you can do is also run Poison Strike double Savage Blow, which makes you very scared and defenseless, but whenever you hit, it's 24 damage for every one, which is insane. Basically his main purpose is to be chip damage, and if you have a Pain Plus healer, he's basically the same way, except he also debuffs stats, which definitely is welcome. Not much else to say. It's a really good refine, and the main reason why it's not higher on the list is because Jafar in himself has a really shitty stat spread of 26 attack and 33 speed, which literally is a worse stat line than Gaius in every way. But his weapon is really good, essentially, is what it comes down to. If you really want a Pain Plus weapon and you have Jafar around, you can just do this. It's a good alternative. And if you keep, like if you don't run Wind Sweep, mages still can't hit you if you take the actual refine. There is no reason to switch to, like, take any refine but this refine, in my opinion. Yes, mages are not as prevalent in Arena, but the few that are there, like Tarja and Lyn, you can actually use it against. And I'll be fucking blunt here. 3 HP and 2 speed are not going to save your ass whatsoever, for the most part. It can, but like, if you're dealing with Armor Emblem and you're not scoring that high, you'll find mages in those Armor Emblem. And you will love that ability. Now, if you score very high in Arena, you might want to get the speed refine, I guess, but frankly, you don't want to use a dagger unit in high-level Arena. It just will hold you back a lot when it comes down to score. Same thing with healers anyway, so... yeah. Basically all I have to say about him. Let's move on to George. And boy, oh boy, do people keep bringing that up. A lot of people see my channel and are like, why do you run Bravebow? Why don't you run Barsha? Barsha got a really good refine. And I'm going to answer here because, fuck, I'm tired. I'm so tired of people, like, pointing that out. It's not good on him. And it's awful for the way I use George. I use George because I don't want him to be a mage counter, a very niche mage counter. I use him because I like him, and I like his stat spread. I also really like how he destroys most units. Just for example, like my Bravebow George saw a 56 HP, no, 56 death adult Tiki, and killed her through it in 2 hits with Bravebow. She didn't even have a chance to hit back. That's how strong Bravebow can be on him. Parsha, on the other hand, you're relying on your enemy using mages. And anytime you have to rely, and that's also true for Jafar, but every time you have to rely on them using a specific type of unit, in Arena, it can suck. And especially for me, because I score in the 720 to 730 range now in Arena. And, surprising fucking no one, I see like 1 or 2 mage per run. So that bow would literally be a 14 might beat stick for every fight except those 2 fights. AKA George would not be pulling his weight. It's a good effect, kinda. And it's a multi-phase plus 6 attack, but I feel like it really should work on everyone. The second effect, that is. Like, the second effect is absolutely useless in most cases. The first effect is like, oh, effective against flying foes. Wow, it's almost like Silver Bow can do that. But, like, if foe uses magic, again, that's just tome units. Now, if it was like, if foe targets res, it would also work on Dragon. And it would be somewhat useful, because his bulk is essentially has more depth than res. so it kind of works with him. But it's not good because it's only working on tomes, and it's like I'm not going to tank Reinhardt because I use this with like deflect magic. It's not worth it, is what it comes down to. It's extremely gimmicky, and you rely on a lot for it to work. And unlike Jafar, that really doesn't really mind it. It's just like, look, if I can live one fight, the enemy team is all dead, period. George, on the other hand, is like, well, it's just a beat stick. You have to hope the enemy dies because it doesn't work on everything else otherwise. You get the idea. It's just extremely gimmicky. That's why it's in the B tier. It's just not good on him. Anyway, let's move on to a unit that can actually have a good refine. Julia. Now, a refine is not great. Well, no. Fuck. Refine... Fuck. The refine update was not kind to her. Dragons can now deal with her, and on defense style, even blue ones can tank her. That holds true with Deirdre as well. It's extremely problematic now, but the silver lining to this is she works as a fantastic mage counter. So in Arena Assault, she is absolutely amazing. Blade Tomes cannot hurt her as well. It's absolutely insane. It's at a point that even Red Tome unit can struggle to kill her if they rely on Blade Tome. She has a really good effect, but it's also, again, more for PVM. Like, I love Deirdre. I adore her art. What can I say? I like MILFs. But, and Julia is literally one of the few units I'm missing that I would actually spend for. The other one was Olwen, which I got yesterday, so, you know. But Julia is a bit better than Deirdre. She has more attack. She can deal with a bit more dragons due to it. But that's where it ends. Like, it's not a bad tome. It's just that the meta destroyed her. Because back when the meta was full in effect, Blade Tomes were everywhere. You were dealing with Horse Emblem every time. Cecilia would always have Drawn Blade. It was really annoying, but Deirdre and Julia would just basically be like, ha, you hit for 0, bitch, and just kill them. No problem whatsoever. Ouch. Anyway, so it was really good, but now it kind of fell short. Like, back then I would actually have ranked it at S tier, maybe even S+, because of how relevant it was to the meta. But nowadays, it kind of dwindles. It's still, like I said, a really good PVM tool, especially dealing with Blade Tomes. But that's all there is to it. It's a good niche, essentially, is what it comes down to. So, I guess we'll move on here. Leo. Boy, Leo, they did him dirty. So they went from gravity to magic throw does less damage? Oh look! It's almost like Parsha! Fucking kill me now! But the difference here is that he has color advantage against a bunch of units like Olwen, Nino, and a good deal of other units. Which means he can kind of use it as a niche AA pick that will work once in a year. I still don't consider it worth getting, and that's why it's in A tier, because, my god, Brynhildr is just very gimmicky in general. If you have more def, you prevent them from following, like from doing any follow attack, which, aforementioned Owen has less def than him, and a lot of mages do. The problem is it's attached on a character that just isn't good, really. His speed is really abysmal, and sure, this kind of remedy it, but it ends up just being a very niche pick, more than anything. Sorry, Leo. It just doesn't really help you that much, does it? From there on, we're going to move for Leliana, and for the longest time, I thought a Refinement would literally be B or C tier, because, let's be honest here, Blade Tome gets to higher heights when it comes down to damage. Oh, but Jay, you're relying on units buffing her! No, I'm relying on literally one unit buffing her ass. And that said one unit can buff her attack by 24, which is death blow 12 for that matter. Like, wake up. It's not as bad as it's not as great as people put it, but it's not as worse as I used to think. Now, the reason why I say this is because Leliana can really shine with a AoE special. I never thought I would say that before, but I'm butchering his name so hard. Acarus made a video when it comes down to Leliana, and I'm most likely going to try to remember to put it in the description, but it's a video of a kind of gimmicky set, but it works really well. It's I think, Blazing Wind set. It's either Blazing Wind or Blazing Flame. I am not too sure. Now, people don't really understand how AoE works, and frankly, I didn't until he mentioned it, but they ignore Combat Triangle. Completely. And the fact that Leliana ends up hitting like 70 attack really makes those AoE hurt like a truck. To a point where she basically one-shots the entire game when her AoE is charged. It's insane how good it is. The only problem is dealing with Vantage. Now I can already hear what two people will say. Heavy bearing is really good to deal with this, but it actually fucks up the synergy. See, with Leliana, you want to run 3 infantry pulse unit and quicken pulse on herself. That way, the weapon gets procced immediately. Now, again, another thing people will say, well, you just said Blade Tome has more attack, so that would be even better. Well, yes and no. First off, Blaze is has less chance of getting fucked by Panic Droid, which is a fair point. But another point is that while you hit like a truck with Blade Tome, it also increases your cooldown by 1, so you can't actually run this. Because AoE becomes a 5 cooldown instead of 4. So you can't actually run triple infantry pulse and quicken pulse and actually have it ready. Unless S-Drink would be inheritable, which it's fucking not. So, Blaze is better and easier to use. And if you don't have 3 infantry pulse, that's also fine. You can just use Heavy Blade and hope to one-shot units, essentially. She can one-shot a wide variety of green units, so it's not bad at all. Now, will I say that she's like a really fantastic unit that I totally agree Game Press should put as the second best red mage of the game? Fuck no. But it is worth considering. It's very gimmicky, but it works well when it does, essentially, is what it comes down to. Leliana is not a bad unit at all, and it really helps her, and frankly I should have put her in A+. But like I said, she can be kind of gimmicky to run, because, you know. Anyway, let's move on to Lind, another B tier unit, and the reason is quite simple here. It doesn't do jack to help her. Neither does Aura, for that matter, but Aura can actually let her work as a semi-healer, because frankly, let's be real here, does it really fucking matter? The 5 heal? Or does it really matter that you really want to switch her weapon? Not really. Like, it helps her, but it's really not that helpful overall. In my opinion. Before someone fucking kills me dead. Dark Aura is not bad, but the problem, and that also extend to Delphia, and that's why I don't consider Delphia to be on equal footing with Lindy anymore. Though not by much. Attack Tactic is now a skill. So, in most team you would actually want to use that fucking dark aura, it's kind of irrelevant. And the other thing as well is you would use to use that to buff dragons because nothing else would buff their attack by 6. Well, own dragon is a thing now, so it feels like it really lost a lot of its potency. And frankly, normal aura has more utility. Though if you'd be on, if you'd ask me to be completely honest, I would totally tell you Blade Tome is still the go-to weapon for Lind. She has the best stat line offensively out of any mages with 35 attack and 36 speed. So it's a no-brainer why Blade Tome is amazing on her. Hence why it's this low on the list. Now let's talk about Lloyd. Boy, a lot of people have been throwing this around as like, oh wow, this is extremely awful, and frankly, no, it's not. It's a bit gimmicky, and it's kind of situational, because it really relies on you running a mage, and it's a reference to Nino, so it's cute, I guess. But, say you have an actual mage on your team, an infantry mage. This is essentially, unless you're picking off dead people, it's essentially 6 attack, 6 speed, 3 def, 3 res. That's enormous. And all that just because you're near a fucking infantry mage. It's an annoying drawback, but it has really good effect in the end. It's actually really solid. Again, that's my opinion. It's a really solid weapon. Overall, really buffs his stats, and even if you don't have an infantry mage, it's still 3 attack and 3 speed. So it's not that awful. It's still helpful, is where it comes down to, essentially. Now, let's move on to Lyn. Boy, oh boy, Lyn. She's a bit expensive to build. I'm just going to point that out. If you really go for this, because Lyn by herself without that refine is, I don't want to say garbage, but she's not great either. Like, she's like the very definition of average. Now, the refine fixes that because it basically gives her Brash Assault 5.5 and Desperation 3 built in, which is fantastic. It makes her able to use the Brash Desperation combo all in her weapon, which means her seal is open as well as her B slot. The reason why I say this is and the reason why I said she's a bit expensive to build is because her best kit requires her to run Wrath to make up for a shit-stain amount of damage. Wrath combos with everything. It combos with Brash Assault, it combos with Desperation extremely well for her. So it comes to no surprise, it's absolutely insane on her. But, like I said, it requires Wrath. You can also run Vantage, which, I mean, is not a bad idea. But it's way less effective because, like I said, Lyn kind of hits like a wet noodle. 44 attack is extremely awful overall. The Brash Desperation combo is actually really solid though, because it lets you break Wary Fighter, it lets you break Sword Breaker if you have the speed for it. Now, you will still get double because of Sword Breaker, because it only lets you double, it doesn't break the I doubled you because Sword Breaker reasons, but, or Quick Riposte, or whatever. Well, Quick Riposte would not really matter here, but you get the idea. It's still a really good weapon. It's just, it's really held back by the fact it's fucking Lyn that has it. Lyn is awful, stat spread wise. Her weapon really tries to save her, and it kinda does, just not as much as a lot of other weapon does. I say she's probably the worst unit in the S- tier when it comes down to refining her weapon, purely because, But if you really like Lyn, which I know a lot of people do for whatever reason, go for it. It's not a bad upgrade at all. let's move on to Marth. Now, a lot of people might be like, why the fuck is he in S tier? Well, it's because he just got his final tool that he really needed. It would be S- if it wasn't for the coming Tempest Trial. The coming Tempest Trial is going to give Drive Attack as a seal. So that means you can run Drive Attack and Drive Speed as seal together on him with his weapon. That is 5 attack, 5 speed, 2 def, 2 res in one unit for everyone around them, regardless of what the fuck they are. It's absolutely insane. And Marth himself, while his stat spread kinda suffers, can actually deal with dragons, which are meta fucking units. And on top of that, he actually kinda heals as well, and it really ties in well with his bulk. It's extremely useful overall. It's honestly one of the best refine this game has right now. And like I said, Drive Attack really pushes him up, because otherwise it's like 5 def, 5 speed, 2 attack, 2 res, which, I mean, is not awful, but it doesn't help as much, obviously. This makes him a very solid buffer, and frankly, extremely underrated. Let's move on to Marik. I'm pretty sure a few people are like, why the fuck is he even that high? Like, I can already hear people being like, he is B tier in refinery priority list. What? That sounds awful. Anyway, so Marik has a really solid weapon, and he can really kind of use it with his stat spread. I actually made a 4-star plus 10 Marik with 52 attack and 47 speed. Yeah, 47. So he can actually really use the Wodao effect. Better than Sonya, in fact. And he ends up like a really bulky mage when it comes down to def as well. So it's actually really solid. It's just that he comes with this stigma of, oh, it's Marik. His attack is 26. Therefore, he sucks. But frankly, it doesn't matter. Dark Excalibur fixes the problem when it comes down to offense, for the most part. Seriously, this guy can hit like a truck. And with merges, while he still struggled in res, that much is true, he doesn't do it nearly as much with that weapon. You will want to build around speed when it comes down to that weapon though, but for obvious reason, because specking is where he really shines. But really, there's not much else to add here. Now, the next one is going to be a very big one. Old Claire and Nameless Blade. Now, a lot of people are like, why the fuck is Michaelis in B tier? Well, Fer and Carol are S tier. This makes no sense whatsoever. But, now, let me educate you here. The Wodao effect on Michaelis is absolutely useless on him. Mini Aether, as it's referred to, I think, like noontime with that effect, doesn't tend to really help, especially now that there's so many units with high amounts of bulk. So it's just not worth running. It's not good on him. It's at a point where whenever someone is like, oh, I really want to refine Michaelis' weapon, I'm like, refine the def and HP. Because that will help you proc more damage with Ignis, on top of making you more protected. It's so much better than a Wodao effect. By miles better. Now, the reason why Minerva is A+ instead of Michaelis is because with Speed+, she actually has the speed to kind of make it work. Now, is it still really good? No. Because, again, you have to rely on Speed Plus on a unit that's 5-star exclusive. Now, Minerva is a fantastic unit as a whole, but frankly, I refined her Haute Claire, and you don't want the Wodao effect. In my opinion, the Speed Plus 3, HP Plus 5 is far more advantageous. Because more speed lets her survive easier. She has plenty of defense. Her res is kind of bad, but in Flyer Emblem, with Fury, you still hit like 31 res. It's insane. 41 death, by the way. And her speed is still really key. Her attack is really solid. She can really use every stat she gets, essentially, is what it comes down to. But speed is the main factor. Now, the elephant in the room, Carol and Fur. Why the fuck are they S tier? Well, they have one thing Michaelis and Minerva doesn't. Access to certain skills. I'm looking at Raph here. And a lot of people are like, yeah, what the fuck are you talking about? But let me put it this way. Ira's best kit right now, and the reason why she's S plus tier in most tier lists, at least the people that have 2 brain cells anyway, is that you don't run Ira's Blade. You run Slaying Edge, refined with speed, with Raph, DC, and Regnal Astra. That way Regnal Astra becomes one cooldown, which with Quicken Pulse you get it procced immediately. With Raph you get an extra 30 damage. You ignore guard, you do a fuck ton of damage on the enemy face if you take a hit. And every start of turn after you get hurt, it just gets ready again. So guard does not actually stop you. It's insanely good. 30 extra damage on a 1 cooldown move. Let that sink in. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And her stat spread is really solid. You still hit 40 base speed at neutral. Her attack is still 32, I believe. 32 or 33. So, it's really amazing. It's really useful on her. And Regnal Astra is the main reason why she's that high a tier. Now, the reason why I point this out is because Fur and Karel can run the same thing. Because they are not tied to a Wadao, they are tied to a Slaying Wadao effect, meaning Moonbow becomes 1 cooldown. And because of the Nameless Blade effect of plus 10 damage, and because of Raph, it's still 25 to 30 damage with Moonbow. Both Carol and Fur can use this. It's absolutely insane how useful it becomes. Like, seriously, you'd be surprised how much kills those guys can get when they are in Raph mode. Even Carol becomes threatening, for fuck's sake. Carol! Anyway, I rest my case. But yeah, Ira is still S+, and they are still S tier, in my opinion, when it comes down to tier list. The main reason why is because Ira's Blade can also be used. You can make her a very solid offensive unit, or you can make her a very solid baiting unit. With Fur and Carol, you basically make them baiting units. They don't have the other set that Ira can use. But it's definitely not that bad either. Like, even in offense, they can be really solid. Especially if you're wondering, which one is better than the other? It's Fear. It's fucking Fear. Because she can deal with dragons, no problem. Carol has a lot of HP, but he has like no res and no death. So it can be kind of threatening. But he still has enough HP to tank a hit. And once he's in that Raph range, it becomes so much better. Anyway, moving on to Raven. Now this should come to no surprise to anybody why it's that high on the list. I've used him on Tempest Trial last month as well. As a 4-star plus 6. It was hitting 63 attack and 52 speed because of Morgan Mail. You get the idea. It's insanely good on him. You will want to run Fury to mitigate the Death Res -5 for obvious fucking reasons. But you can basically run more or less what Ira runs as a player phase unit. Now you might wonder, what the fuck am I talking about? I'm talking about the Ira's Blade set. Swift Sparrow with Regnal Astra and like Desperation. You can do the same with Heavy Blade as a seal. 63 attack is really hard to top. the first hit gets the skill ready, the second one gets Draconic Aura procced. I know it's not Regnal Astra, but he still ends up with like 5 to 10 more attack than Ira. That's the big difference here. It makes up for what Regnal Astra does in damage over Raven. So, yeah, he becomes absolutely monstrous, and frankly, a lot of people have been like, well, he becomes easy to one-shot, and yes, against red with 60 attack. Because he can tank green with 60 attack. He can tank blue for, like, really easily. He can really easily hit Desperation range, so he's actually really good. And once he's in Desperation range, it's like, whatever's in your path dies, basically. Like, to almost the same extent as Ira, because Ira gets 20 damage from Regnal Astra, obviously. Well, mine is at 50 speed, so I'm comparing a +9 Ira here. But Raven at +6 4-star is still already getting 18 damage from Draconic Aura. Now, if it's +10, that's 19, so the gap is really just 1 damage. Except Raven has more attack. The difference here is, obviously, Ira, like I said, can run a baiting set. Raven can't. But it's still literally one of the best weapons to refine in the game. Hands fucking down. Anyway, moving to our boy Roy. Binding Blade. It's also amazing. It's a very good meta weapon, if anything. Now, people might not understand what I mean by that, but most dragons he can kill. Now, can he kill blue ones? Depends if they have Triangle Adept, and if he's at full HP. If he's at full HP, yes. Quick Riposte fucking 5, which is what he runs, can destroy them. He can just really, really hit good amounts of def and res. So, because of that, when fighting dragons, it can actually hit, like, especially with res tactic, like, levels of res like 40 res, tank the first blow and then hit twice, and kill because of it. Though that depends, because if they build on defense, they will tank both hits. So, be aware of this. He is still a very solid unit, and his refine is absolutely amazing. It really, really helps. QR5 is amazing. You would run, especially, like, there's 2 things you want to run on Roy as his B slot. Actually, there used to be 3. One of them was Quick Riposte, which was the end-all be-all, but you either lose a seal slot or a B slot because of it. Now, the best option, in my opinion, is Wrath. And your second best option is Swordbreaker. Swordbreaker to deal with pesky unit like Ira, for, again, obvious reason. Steady Breath can really run well on him. Distant Counter is also amazing on him. It really comes down to just what your preference is. He can run a lot of builds. And he's part of the balanced unit that I refer to a lot if you have been on this channel for a while. Balanced units are essentially just that. They have very balanced stats. But the thing that really makes them shine is when you merge them enough, they become monsters. Whereas not balanced unit don't. To give you an example here, my Pala. Pala has like 30 across the board almost. Like 30, 30, 25, 25. Doesn't look really good, right? But if you merge them, they can use every bit of point they get. My Pala with Fire Emblem hits 45 HP, 56 attack, 51 speed, 38 def, and 37 res. Able to kill dragons, able to tank most of anything, really, and destroy them. She becomes insanely good because of merge. And this is just 4-star plus 10. 5-star plus 10, you had +2 to all stats, essentially. So, comes to no surprise, Roy ends up in that category as well. You can hit really high amounts of speed or a lot of bulk. which is also the category most dragons fall in, by the way. Just pointing that out. There's a reason why dragons are so good in Arena nowadays, eh? So, yeah, he's really solid because of this. It really depends on how you want to build him and how much you want to merge him. But I think I've said my piece. I'm gonna... Oh god, I'm over an hour. I'm gonna move to Seneki. How many do I have left? I have 5. Jesus. Okay. So, Seneki. Let's be real here. While her attack was cool and all, used to always sucks. But, in recent days, she doesn't suck that much. In fact, she doesn't suck at all. That extra attack and res is, again, kind of problematic. It's the same problem as Lloyd, right? But guess what? She pairs amazingly with Anoka, because they buff each other that way. It's a weird bond synergy, and it really works well for her. That's her hit 42 base attack as well. I think she hit like 59 attack with no seal whatsoever. Which is good, but she's also a rest tank because of it. So she can also be a niche AA assault, AA unit. So, Seneki is great. The problem is, she's a rest tank. Long range rest tank. Hello, I'm a dragon, I bust your ass, is basically what it's called. So while she can deal with a lot of green unit in one shot because of that refine, she really struggles in tanking anything that is not a mage. And even then, it sucks because Blade Tome. Though you can remedy this with dual ranged, obviously. But it's still limiting. It's still very fucking limiting. So, Silith. Silith. Silith doesn't suck, but he doesn't rock either. I've put him in A tier because I don't consider upgrading his weapon to be exactly worthwhile. If you really like the character, that's up to you. That's fine. But if you're talking about just straight up maths, it's not really worth it. The reason why I say this is because you need to upgrade a Deflect Magic to 3, you need to give him Divine Turfing, and then he can deal with some mages. Which sounds good on paper, right? Definitely not as bad as what people think. But the thing is, his father does that all and better, and he has double deflect in his B slot. So it comes down to like, why would I bother? Kind of deal. And also like, even if you don't have the father, he can really struggle when it comes down to it. So it's like, I want to like you, but fuck no. Now, if Divine Turfing is refinable, that would be better. Also, I'm going to point this out, and I know it's extremely late in the video, but I don't want to re-record an hour. Julius also needs a refine. Divine Naga really needs a refine, and I know what a lot of people will say when I say this. Oh, but dragons... No, it gives counters to... Well, no, it's more like, oh no, we don't want like more refine for her, her weapon is already that good. And it's like, you can make it so it helps against dragons and nothing else, you know? Like, simple refine effect that I thought about in like literally 5 minutes. Negate breath effect. It negates the switch rest to death. It negates distant counter on lightning breath. It negates the smoke effect on dark breath. You know, that stuff. She would be a dedicated dragon counter without being awful. Another example with Silith. I don't really know what I would do with him though. Probably refine to so the first hit becomes 80% less. And if you can make it different than his father's, like 80% on the first hit and the second hit has deflect magic built in, essentially. His father doesn't really need it, and he could really use a different buff, if anything, but that's another story. Anyway, Soren. Now, the reason why I put him on the same level as Marik is this weapon doesn't help him at all. It's one of those weapons where IS just sits down and are like, what should we give him? Oh, I don't fucking know. How about Olaf? Ah, sure, fuck it, why not? Like, they don't even consider the character at all. Chill attack is not bad, don't get me wrong, that's like the highlight of the weapon. The owl effect does not help him at all. Because his stat spread makes him an aggressive unit. He's not meant to be a tank. His death is awful. So Owl Tome is just really not that useful on him. And the reason why I say this is because you tend to give Owl Tome to baiting unit. I'm looking at Tarja, like Christmas Tarja. I'm looking at Ellie Lynn. I'm looking at Halloween Henry. Those units tank and kill. That's why Owl Tome is so good on them. They also have good mixed bulk, essentially, because of it. Soren has none of those things. And you cannot refine his weapon to get Owl and a buff into his death to fix up his death like Henry L.A. Lynn does. So, it ends up being a very futile refine. It's honestly one of the worst refine of the list. It's just that the weapon itself is kind of good, and you can refine it to get speed, in which case, he basically ends up being a Nino with chill attack in his weapon instead of, Blade Tome effect. Their stat spread are basically nigh identical, and he has more HP that way. Though, he still, lags behind by 1 speed, but it's not that great. It's not that much behind. It's just that the effect itself of Owl Tome cannot really be used because you're extremely offensive with him. You want to kill stuff with him. And unless you surround yourself and then attack, that doesn't work. It's extremely gimmicky. And at this point, if you really want Owl Tome on this guy, you will run a Death Refined base Owl Tome. I am not joking. It's strictly better because he gets Death to actually kind of make up for it. This is my 2 cents. Here's Takumi. A lot of people consider him to be absolutely useless, and while I can completely understand why his refine is absolute crap, especially considering I do use Takumi. I think he's like my second best archer, and I use him a lot. But even I can see that this is fucking useless. You can make him as a teleporting bomb with a lot of attack and speed with it. So it's not awful. He becomes kind of a mobility master. But the problem is Brave Boy is still better. It's better for him. It sucks. But it is. Because of his stat spread, he can kind of tank like some DC unit and do a fuck ton of damage. The same reason I use my George. In fact, he has a slightly, I say, better stat spread than my Takumi. Now people will be like, what the fuck? Than my George, I mean. Now people might be like, what the fuck, because I plus 10 George. But the difference is Takumi is available at 5-star and he has close counter as a very important fodder skill for certain unit like Halloween Henry, L.A. Lynn. So, and Jacob obviously, but Halloween Jacob. But, this refine is not really helping him that much. That's the main problem. And for the last of the list, I love how there's no hero between T and Z that I've got on a refine. Anyway, Zephiel. It's average? I mean, it's really good on him. DD3 means that he has the A slot freed, which is great. It means it's almost as if he had DC in his weapon in DD3 in his A slot, basically. Again, though, it still requires DC, but he ends up with a lot of res and def. The main problem is that's too little, too late. I'm not saying this because Zephyr sucks. I'm saying that because we're not in a meta that's heavily centered on mages. We're in a meta that heavily centers on melee unit, dragons, and armored unit, which are two things that this weapon is basically a fucking 16 might beat stick, I guess. Especially his first effect. Like, his first effect is absolutely atrocious. In fact, now that I look at it, I should have probably put him in A tier. Not A+. Because, like, look, the two big thing in Arena are dragons and armored unit. His first effect doesn't work in one of those classes of character, and his second effect only works in like 2 or 3 units from the other class. Like, you get what I mean. In most scenarios, it doesn't help. And that sucks. Because, yeah, I like Zephyr as a villain. What can I say? I also hope Naglafar on Leon gets a refine at one point that doesn't suck, because, boy, Leon needs it. But yeah, like, it's still pretty solid. You can't hit like a lot of res because of it, and really use like his stat spread to his advantage. It's just the wrong meta for it. I can totally imagine later Zephyr becoming way better. It's just that right now, it's not good, essentially. But yeah, I think that's about it. There's really not much else for me to talk about. I might do follow-up videos whenever we get some more refine unit, but as is, there's just no reason for me to do it. At least for now. Because there's nothing else. I will most likely check how people feel about those types of videos, because it does take some kind of effort to go through and do this. I kind of want to up my quality of content, so, you know. Anyway, as usual, my Discord is going to be in the description for people who wants to talk with me or wants to share anything with me. So, I'm going to leave it here. This is fucking 73 minutes long. Kill me now. Anyway, I'll see you guys later.